Hello, everyone. So, back for another round of questions and responses. First question this time, super relevant to our situation. A question regarding closeness. And with the obvious restrictions on closeness and the difficulty of closeness, how do we try to maintain that important reality in our lives? The closeness of a relationship, the closeness of connection. And obviously, you all are already finding many kind of creative ways to do that. I mean, people are, Zooming is all the rage these days, or, meeting up in parking lots and talking from your cars or the back of your van or whatever. And those are all great things, and, encourage them as much as we're able to do it kind of safely. But I actually want to comment on almost the opposite, although they're not really opposites, and they seem opposite, but it's the idea of how to live apart, how to live separate. And the reason why this is important, we have a huge part of our tradition that's about living in solitude, right? And tons of religious community, tons of our saints throughout history have gone away from the world and intentionally put themselves in circumstances very similar to our own in terms of, being at a distance from people, being a little bit isolated. So it's worthwhile to maybe consider that at the current time. What's the value of that? So a great image from the church fathers, the desert fathers. One of the things people kind of accuse them of, like, well, you're wasting your lives. You're just going out to live in the desert. Why don't you do something? Like, why don't you, make and sell hats or something useful? You're going to go live in the desert. But they live in the desert, and one of the images they used to kind of explain or justify their lives, so to speak, was humanity's been in a shipwreck, and all of us are out at sea, kind of trying to stay afloat and trying not to drown. And the image of the desert fathers is that they've, instead of like trying to, go save everyone, what they did is they went opposite. They swam away to shore. And again, it seems like, oh, you're being a coward, you're running away, why don't you help people? And they're saying, no, we're going to get to shore so that we can throw out the rope and pull others in, right? The idea is if we're both drowning, we can't help each other. We're just going to pull each other down in our chaos and our desperate effort to stay above water. And in many ways, that's what often happens in lives. It's kind of a funny image for humanity. But the image of, I'm going to go get to shore first and get stable so that I can better help and even more effectively save other people. So the desert fathers went away from the noise and the chaos and the distractions, and they went and they confronted themselves. They confronted silence and they confronted God, or rather they allowed themselves to be encountered by God. And there's so much to be said in that, and I'm trying to touch on this a bit in other, the prayer videos and stuff. But it's a great image to kind of at least give us perspective on quarantine, and even in a certain sense, like don't waste your quarantine, I guess. And I really am getting the sense just from comments from certain people, I kind of feel unfortunately like there are people out there that are missing it. And again, it doesn't mean we're not all anxious to get back to normal or whatever. It doesn't mean it's not great to be able to come to church and to see people, but I still think there's something very important that God desires for us in these moments that unfortunately is very easy to miss. And the reality is we all know we can't continue like this forever, and things are going to eventually budge, and the change is coming probably little by little. So it's almost like, hey, time is running out to get some advantage out of this thing. So don't waste it. So again, I'll continue talking about this elsewhere, but we need the closeness and the connection. But the thing is again, I repeat that saying of one of the desert fathers, obtain peace of heart and you'll save 1,000 souls around you. What happened is the desert fathers left the city, and then the city went out to pursue them, just like with John the Baptist, right? Went out from the desert. That's not a very ideal place to go, prepare the way for the Messiah. You think you go to the city and you'd preach in the cities. But no, go to the desert, and people wander out there to see something different, to encounter something different. And there's something very important about us getting ourselves together, getting some sense of our own thoughts, our own hearts, getting to a stable place in our lives so that we can be effective to others around us. And if you look at the missions of the saints, really the effectiveness of the saints, so much of it was just that. It's like, yeah, they did their things to help the poor and to, start orphanages and stuff. Great. But one of the main elements of the effectiveness of their life is just they had this holy, peaceful, different kind of loving presence that was effective just being around people. And even especially in like the St. Solanus Cases or St. Andre Bessette doorkeeper saints, right? People went to them just simply for them, to encounter them, to learn from them, to be around them. It's just their pace of life, their sense of confidence, their closeness to God. That's very fruitful and effective. Again, just to round this off, think about, St. Therese, the whole cloistered tradition, those who've left the world specifically to go live this quiet life apart. So St. Therese, her idea was she was simply called to be the love at the heart of the church. And again, now this is getting mystical. This is the idea of there's this connectedness, so deep a connectedness in the mystical body of Christ that I can live completely apart and not just like get wise and write a book so that my book can help you, or preach homilies and post them on the internet so that can help you. No, it's like even if we never heard a single word from St. Therese, as we've never heard from so many of her sisters who didn't write their stories, there's still an effectiveness in their life that's touching us even in our day. There's this way that their prayer and their love, their life poured out, doesn't just pour out into time and pass away. It doesn't just pour out into their convent self-contained and it remains there forever. It pours out into the chalice of Christ, right? Into the blood of the church, which spills out and feeds out through the whole world, through space and time. Now, we can't measure this. We can't even, hardly understand it, but we've all had the experience of grace just showing up, like dropping on you from the sky, so to speak, randomly one day. Who knows how it is that this grace works, but there's something meaningful to pouring out our life simply into God and letting that be distributed through him. Again, I reference and keep inviting people to watch the movie A Hidden Life. You can stream it on Amazon or order it or whatever. But again, it's this idea of people doing this tremendous sacrifice, but this tremendous holiness of life, unnoticed, uncared for by those around them. And again, their story got out, and so now we have their story. But even if it didn't, even if we never heard a single word from them and never knew of their testimony, true, authentic life that always has its value, and in eternity and even in this life. So I just guarantee you, I absolutely guarantee you that God has something for you in this moment, that there's something important about our living apart for a little while. And again, still trying to keep in touch with people, use Zoom and whatever, but don't miss the incredible importance of going, being alone, sitting still, and just being with God.